Hi, welcome to Sci-Fi Scavenger, my booktube channel. Today I'll be reviewing Cold Water by Dave Hutchinson, which was published in the UK by Solaris last year in 2022. I will be attempting to avoid spoilers. We'll see how I get on. So Cold Water is the fifth book set in a fractured Europe, although it doesn't link to the others at all, only obliquely, just in general terms, and I think it can be read as a standalone novel. So the background of all five of the books, including this one, is that in a Europe of the future, the geopolitical situation is very different to today's. The EU is hanging on by a thread, with most of its constituent nations having left the Union, done a Brexit. Nearly every country that we know has spawned microstates, sort of Middle European principalities, and more are in the works on any given day. So in a Europe with borders springing up all over the place, an organisation that can discreetly move packages, people or data from one location to another can thrive, and Le Coureur de Bois is one such organisation. I was curious about what that name means. The literal translation is runner of the woods, a nickname given to independent French-Canadian traders that travelled throughout the interior of New France, territories in present-day Canada and the USA, way back in the 16th and 17th centuries. Anyway, back to this book. Le Coureur are sort of low-end James Bond types, trained in spycraft, definitely skirting the rules, breaking a few along the way. The setup for this novel is that a Coureur has been killed in an apparent accident in a separatist part of Poland. Carrie Hughes is our protagonist, a 60-something Texan woman who has lived in this fractured Europe for many years. It becomes clear early in the book that she had an on and off relationship with the dead Coureur, Maxim, for many years. Local cops have ruled his death an unfortunate road accident. Carrie is a retired Coureur, but she is persuaded to investigate the death, in case it's not all as it seems. Even Coureur Central don't know what Maxim was up to in Poland. Unable to rely on the local Coureur in Poland, Carrie builds a makeshift crew using her contacts from her days as a Coureur, and the investigation proceeds in fits and starts, thwarted and frustrated at times by parties that have different, possibly conflicting interests. There are four parallel threads in the book. So one is Carrie's present-day investigation. There are flashbacks to a younger Carrie. There's an Estonian policewoman, Krista, who's suspended pending an investigation of a police brutality case involving her father, who's also an Estonian cop. And finally, a young and rather flaky alcoholic Estonian journalist named Lena. The historical Carrie thread provides a nice backdrop to the main Carrie thread. We get some insight into her early years, her recruitment and training as a Coureur, and some of her early scrapes on the job. It wasn't at all clear to me, at least at first, how the Estonian cop Krista fitted into the story, but Hutchinson patiently builds that thread along with Lena's until they touch and intertwine with the main Carrie thread. A feature of the earlier Europe books is the existence of the community, a parallel Europe which can be entered at various crossing points if you know where to look. The community is peopled by British country squire types, the sole occupants of an otherwise deserted continent. Relations between the community and our future Europe are fractious, to say the least, and there's been a sort of shadow Cold War between them. The community featured heavily in the previous books, so a reader familiar with those might well expect it to make a showing in this one. And it does, but not until nearer to the end. I like the way Hutchinson draws this version of Europe. In keeping with the earlier books, he sticks to Central and Eastern Europe for the most part. It is both quaintly old-fashioned and hyper-modern. In this novel, there are hints of high-tech surveillance, automated weapon systems, and invisibility suits, but also boutique hotels, bars, and cafes of a certain kind. I like the sense of the geopolitical pot bubbling away, threatening to boil over at frequent intervals. Some of the plot even unfolds during separatist riots. Lots of tiny states means lots of spying and covert investigations. At one point, Carrie is recruited to spy for a certain newly independent state, although she agrees to this side hustle on her own terms. It's a chaotic and fast-moving world, and I really like the way that he builds it. I was also intrigued by mention of a global flu epidemic, a sort of COVID with bells on, which caused much death and disruption at some point in the recent past, killing tens of millions of people in Europe. This seems to be contributing to the current political malaise. If our national government can't protect us, what good are they anyway? It's only referred to in passing, but I found myself really wanting to read that story. I really like the way that the alternate worlds, yes, worlds plural, are intertwined in this story. just hints and clues for most of the book, and then out in the foreground in the final act. There's more of it in the earlier books, but there's enough here to keep it interesting, I think. I noted it's uncommon and very refreshing to have a female protagonist, especially one in her 60s in a novel of this kind. In fact, with the Krista thread, there are two strong female leads, both highly competent without being turned into some sort of superwoman stereotype. I think I've said before in other reviews that I'm easily confused, and I did find the many parallel threads difficult to follow at times. While the Carey threads are obviously not running concurrently, one's obviously in the past, it eventually dawned on me that all 4 threads are running on different timelines. They do coalesce in a pretty satisfying way towards the end of the book, so I kind of forgave it. I could have probably done without the Lena thread, the flaky Estonian journalist. I don't think it added a huge amount, but I think I see why the author needed it. She ended up being a kind of a tool, a patsy of yet another antagonist party operating behind the scenes for the vast majority of the book. As I was reading Cold Water, I did find myself wondering if this is really a science fiction novel. There's some advanced tech. It's set in the future, about 80 years, I think. It's a bit hard to tell. And there are parallel worlds, so I guess that counts as SF. In reality, though, it felt more like a spy novel or a police procedural or even a crime caper than a science fiction novel. In the end, I enjoyed myself, so it doesn't really matter. As far as I can tell, Dave Hutchinson is not a widely read author, nor have his complex and tightly plotted books been garlanded with awards. But I would definitely recommend his Europe series. I think it's top-notch speculative fiction. I mean, I wouldn't insist on it being shunted to the top of your TBR pile, but it's definitely worth a read. This 5th book is maybe less strong than some of the others in the series, so I'd give it a 6, maybe a maximum of 7 out of 10. So that's it. Thanks for watching. Have you read this? Let me know in the comments what you thought. But otherwise, nice to see you again. Tune in soon for another science fiction video. Bye-bye.